Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Sphere podcast, which is shot from my terraced hideout in Gaza City. As you can see, it's beautiful out there. It's lovely August. Um, and I have with me a very good guest. And it's Yoram Hazony. Yoram Hazony probably doesn't need any introduction to the people who watch this podcast, but in case you do need an introduction, he's a political philosopher by training. He's had many academic posts, but he's become particularly famous in the sort of intellectual political world in recent years because he founded the National Conservatism Conference, which the first one was a huge hit. I remember it. I was not I was not technically supposed to attend, but somebody snuck me in. But it was very successful, and then the other editions were very successful. And you had Rome, you had Brussels. We'll talk about that. Welcome.
Pleasure to be here. Good to see you.
Likewise. So okay, so I guess to sort of frame the discussion, because not everybody who watches this is in the sort of NatCon world. A lot of people are sort of traditional DC people. I thought it might be useful to start with I love asking very dumb questions, and it's a very good interview technique. And it, explain this to me like I'm a 6-year old or a sixth grader. What is national conservatism, and why do we need a new name, a new movement, a new body of thought, to tell us, what the right is, what it should be, and so on and so forth. Uh,
Okay, good question. I don't know if I can keep it down to sixth grade level, but let me try. And
Precocious sixth grader.
right, I'll try to keep it down to ninth grade level, and we'll see if
Okay.
you can adjust the knob if you think I'm not doing a good job.
Okay.
All right. So, first of all, I'm the first to admit, and I admit this often, that I think it is annoying to have a national conservatism movement in addition to simply having a conservatism movement. In theory, um, it you really shouldn't need the two descriptors, and I'm looking forward to a time when we can just call it conservatism. The problem
Right.
is, as you know, and I think it's pretty well known at this point, the term conservative, which classically, and it's sort of its original meaning, if you go back 2 centuries, referred to traditionalist uh, politicians of a traditionalist bent defending a political order based on traditional inherited uh, English, British, French, and uh, other European traditions. It was imported to America around the same time, and uh, those traditions were what I would call nationalist. They had the uh, the concept of an independent nation at the heart of them, separate, independent from other nations and political powers, and with its own inheritance. They
Right.
they had a religion at the center of them, which was an inherited religion, a constitution at the center of them that was an inherited constitution, and these things were not the same, obviously, in every nation. But the term conservative uh, at the time was reasonably clear what it was talking about. This word has been deconstructed, reconstructed, and abused since then. And in the minds of all too many, certainly in the United States, certainly in Britain, and but also more generally across Europe and in the democratic world, the word conservative, for various benign and utterly malignant reasons, has been hijacked to refer to liberalism. And
Right.
liberalism, as Roger Scruton wrote in one of his books, is the principal enemy of conservatism. And people who don't understand that liberalism is the principal enemy of conservatism tend to be very confused. Okay, so by liberalism, I mean a political theory that
Right.
has at
That
its
was that was my next question, because that's another word that sort of gets thrown around a lot. So how do you define liberalism for the purpose for these purposes anyway?
yeah. I know that academics spend a great deal of time arguing about the minutia of it, but I think that if you're
Hey,
looking at it,
we both have training in philosophy. It's okay to
yeah,
want to define terms. It's not a dirty
okay.
word here.
Well,
You're allowed to
no,
do that. This is a
I,
safe space.
I no, I've been using a definition for quite some time that I find that people simply don't object to it. I know that you can enter into endless nuanced debates, but in general, people do not object when I say liberalism, as it's understood in political theory, is a political framework which asserts and assumes that you know most of what you need to know about politics if you concede or assume that human beings are born perfectly free and perfectly equal, that they undertake obligations, moral and political obligations, through consent in one way or another, meaning you have to agree in order to for someone to come and say you have an obligation. And finally, that the purpose of government is to defend these individual liberties and equalities and the right of consenting to obligation before you're obliged. That's the purpose of government. So that's a very broad definition that encompasses a great deal of variation. It certainly includes, in America and in Britain. You'll tell me whether it works in France as well. The overwhelming majority of the public figures that are considered to be left of center and right of center over the last 60, 70 years,
Yes. Yeah.
and in order for us to not be utterly confused, we should be saying that conservatism is not that. That
Right.
conservatism, there are different kinds of conservatism, but they all agree that liberalism is itself a revolutionary movement.
Yes.
Whether it's armed and in the streets or not, it's a movement that seeks to uproot, overhaul, overthrow. And in practice, that's what it does. It uproots, overhauls, and overthrows. So when we look at the politics of democratic countries beginning around 2016, around Brexit and the Trump movement,
Right.
we enter into a period where liberalism's kind of run amok. It's morphed into the so-called liberal international order, which either explicitly or implicitly is about creating some kind of governance, which is a different word for government of
Right.
all nations and the whole world to whatever extent is possible by liberalism. And that universal liberalism in 2016, it becomes uh, uh, the 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 primary target of Brexit, of the Trump movement. There had already been in 2016 similar political upheavals in Hungary and Poland and India and elsewhere, and was soon followed by the rise of such movements in other countries. And the problem that we had 2016 and stepping forward and saying, look, as intellectuals, academics, writers, journalists, policy people, ideas people in general, who are sympathetic to these movements and think that they are, rather than being some monstrous, pernicious development, they're actually a road to possible health and well-being uh, for the countries involved, and for the world more broadly. For those of us trying to say at that moment we're conservatives was kind of a non-starter, since so many of the supporters of this crazy global internationalist thing were calling themselves conservatives. So,
Right.
so there's some on the right who, understandably, just said, "Look, forget it. The word conservative is the way it's used today. It's synonymous with universal liberalism. So the word is ruined, and there's no point in using it. And
Yeah.
and we should just come up with something else." And various people, friends of ours, have proposed different things. The problem is that uh, none of those different things has caught on so well.
Right.
And and
I agree with that. Like people have tried to come up with these new terms that they just don't catch on, and there's something paradoxically, very left wing about saying, no, 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 no. Actually, my pronouns are neo-monarchist, uh, you know, or reactionary or right wing. I use the term right wing, but because I think it's a broader
yeah, it's
and right wing is descriptive in the original sense of the French Revolution, because that's where it's come from, which is everybody who's against the left,
yeah,
everybody who looks at the left's program and says, no, I don't want that. And that's a descriptive with sort of factual content. Anyway, just, I it's something that's frustrated me for as long as I've been in the conservative movement, um, which is starting to be a long time now, which is all of these I was going to say Jesuitical, but that's pejorative. Debates about the meaning, capital M, of conservatism, capital C, which have no relevance to ordinary people or anybody who doesn't know what the National Review is. Um, eh, but also, and then there's the second thing, which is, oh, let's come up with some new word, even though, again, like normal people, they think, oh, somebody's on the right, that's a conservative, right? They think Donald Trump is a conservative. They don't think he's a national populist. They think he's maybe a different kind of conservative, but they would say he's a conservative.
right.
And he would say he's a conservative. Anyway, I'm just I was interrupting you, but to agree with you. Um,
Yeah. Well, so
just about the nomenclature
I
issue.
think I think the term "the right" is useful for all sorts of things, but as you say, uh, the right includes all sorts of groupings that are um, that are not nationalist and not conservative.
Right,
So that for the purpose of trying to gather together a large, broad
right,
coalition of perspectives that roughly, generally, circa um, 2016, 2020, 2024, um, are appropriately rallying behind Trump and Vance and Rubio and Viktor Orban. It could be Le Pen, and certainly the Brexit movement. But I would say at this point, the right of the Brexit movement,
right, right, right,
and and others. If the goal is to explain and understand the historical, the philosophical, and the policy aspects of this grouping, then you need a term which I think the right term is conservative, but in the context of all of these liberals and libertarians and revolutionaries saying that they're conservatives, it was helpful to for the organizers of this this series of conferences to add the word national, since the nation is really what distinguishes uh, conservatives in our day from the libertarians and liberals at the center of the political spectrum.
Yes.
And so that's how it was chosen. It's worked well. It's caught on, and I think the goal obviously is to defeat all of the imposters who are liberals, heart and soul, and you use the word conservative. Once we've done with that, mostly we can just drop the national part and just be conservatives.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to ask the inevitable devil's advocate question. Although we don't have to spend too much time on it, but let's say I'm an American conservative, and I go, look, Dr. Hazony, like all of that is very good, but like I've read the Declaration of Independence, I've read Jefferson, I've read the Federalist Papers, and the notion that individual rights are central to the political proposition, that individual liberty and equality are central to what government exists to secure, that government exists to secure rights or God-given rights, uh, is what America was founded on. It's pretty clear, and all of this stuff is like European authoritarian, reactionary, and if it works for Europeans, that's fine. Like I don't hate Orban. I probably prefer Orban to Ursula von der Leyen. But here in America, we're a special and unique country where we have figured out a way to make those ideas work, and that's what we need to conserve. And I might and that's why I'm a conservative, because I want to conserve those things which were at our founding, which depend on a sort of Christian or Judeo-Christian or Protestant culture and so on and so forth. But fundamentally, it's a liberal project. What would you say to that?
Well, I would say that uh, Thomas Jefferson uh, was fundamentally about a liberal project, and Tom Paine was fundamentally about a liberal project, and that they were both extremely sympathetic to the French Revolution, and probably if they could have, they would have had that happen in the United States and in Britain as well. I mean, these shocking letters of Jefferson looking forward to the French Revolution coming to Britain and overthrowing everything there. So yes, if your view is that the American founding is entirely encompassed by Thomas Jefferson and his close revolutionary radical allies, then you think that way. But historically, it's not. It's an optical illusion, a myth. You can even say that it's worse than that. It was actually something designed during the 1940s, during the Roosevelt years. The
Interesting.
the purposeful. I mean, the Democrats looked at the history of America and saw that the Republican Party had all the heroes. That the Federalists, Washington, Hamilton, Adams. The Constitution was drafted by a fellow named Gouverneur Morris, John Jay. If you take that party, which kind of represents the traditional worldview of the American right. So it is on a great many issues very, very close to the inherited Anglo tradition. so much so that Jefferson considered them to be heretics, to have been to have betrayed the revolution with the Constitution that they drafted, which he saw as being, simply copied more or less from the British Constitution. And you can get into the details of this argument, but
Yeah.
fundamentally, the view that goes America was liberal at its founding. The founding father was Jefferson, not Washington.
Right.
Washington.
Washington
Washington.
was not a liberal.
He was confused. Washington was a bad liberal. Jefferson was a good liberal. No, seriously, that's what. If you read Lewis Hart's, and when he talks about the American, he's like one of the primary architects of this. In the 1940s, 50s, of this theory that America was founded liberal and there were no conservatives. And when you read Hart's, what he says is, yes, there are the true liberals like Jefferson and his party, and and so what were the Federalists who actually fought the Revolutionary War and then created the Constitution and then governed
Right.
the first. Well, like, what were they? So he said, well, they were bad liberals, not conservatives,
Right.
but just
Right.
confused
Right.
people who couldn't figure out liberalism. Okay, so
Right.
look, there's
Interesting.
this whole mythology from the 1940s that was created in order to give legitimacy to the liberalism of the Democratic
Fascinating.
Party. And that's when the Jefferson Memorial was created. And if you look into it, you find out that that the quotes from Jefferson have been spliced together in order to hide his actual views. And anyway, there's this crazy post World War II liberal inheritance, which claims not only to stand for universal truth,
Right.
but it also claims that the American founding was Lockean and Jeffersonian alone, and that nobody opposed it and nobody objected. And it is what it is. It's a way of erasing conservative impulses, conservative national figures, conservative substantive and philosophy and worldview from the American founding. And what I would say to Americans, I wrote a book called Conservatism: A Rediscovery, and the first couple of chapters deal with this. And what I would say to Americans is first of all, stop the brainwash. You can argue for liberalism without completely distorting the American founding, and everything up until the 1940s.
Yeah. I mean, we could have an entire conversation or seven about uh, historical lies and historical myths, because so much of the sort of, and not just popular but academic history is somewhere between extremely misleading to outright fake. And then there's another conversation about when revisionism goes too far in the other direction. uh but that's an aside. All right, final question about national conservatism. And I mean the NatCon movement conferences, your movement, not the theory. You've had conferences in London, in Brussels, in Rome. There's a very fascinating aspect to this. Of course, myself as a French citizen who opines about American politics, I'm part of this whether I want to be or not. There's this fascinating movement of what a friend of mine called the International of Nationalists, which seems like a contradiction in terms, but it's very real. Empirically it works, quote unquote, in the sense that whenever people of our ilk from different countries meet up, we get along famously. We sort of share goals, we share worldview. Um, why did you want to internationalize the NatCon movement? Why do you think Why do you think it's important? Why do you think that there is this sort of international that you've sort of fostered and helped to grow and flourish, but it was there before NatCon Global or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, your thoughts about that?
Well, I'm hesitant to say that I didn't create that aspect of the movement. It was kind of there by the time that by the time that uh, Krista Muth and Anna Velish and I and Rusty Reno and our various friends and colleagues, by the time that we had our first conferences in London and in Washington in 2019, I think that the feeling that nationalists in many different countries shared a great deal in common already existed. So
Yes.
I mean, it's true that we've enabled it. We have fostered it, and by inviting people from different countries and allowing them to meet, we've definitely encouraged it. But it existed. It simply
Yes.
already existed. And so the question, by the way, I have a new edition of the Virtue of Nationalism just out a few weeks ago, and there's a reply to critics at the back of the book. And one of the questions people ask is, some people are actually alarmed by the international nature of this nationalist movement,
Yeah.
and they think it's like pernicious. And I mean, this is one of my replies. First of all, I don't think, I mean, just as a matter of human nature, nationalism it's a worldview that seeks a world of independent nations. It doesn't
Yes.
necessarily, it's not utopian. It doesn't necessarily say that you know every group that calls itself a nation can have independence. But in general, the world is governed best when nations are many nations are allowed to pursue their own inheritance and their own direction and
Yes.
their own interests. And so there's kind of an assumption that you hear sometimes, especially on sometimes, especially on the American right these days, this kind of uh, you, you anyone who feels sympathy for some other country is is treated as though he's like inherently treasonous or something. I think that this is, it's just a denial of human nature. The
Yeah.
fact is that human beings who feel a great love and loyalty to their own nation also tend to have a great deal of sympathy for at least some other nations, that when they see just an a concrete example, when I see the courts in France making Marine Le Pen an outlaw, the leader of the opposition in France is outlawed and is walking around with one of those ankle ankle transmitters. I mean the the attack on the French inheritance, on French democracy, on the French people, the insistence that they can only have leaders who are approved by by Brussels and by the liberal internationalists. Otherwise, you're not allowed to win. So I personally, I feel identity and outrage. Now, I don't mean to say that I agree with everything that Marine Le Pen has ever said or everything that she thinks, but my natural impulse to identify and wish the French nationalists well, and to be horrified by the way that they're abused. This is completely natural, and this is what people find. They come to our conferences, and they discover a spirit of kinship, something like brotherhood. If you don't like brotherhood and you want to reserve that for the nation, then you can say
The
that
universal brotherhood of man. That's really what NatCon is about.
well, no, it might be it might be the brotherhood of nations, but if you don't like it,
You call
if
it
you
Comintern. That's a catchy name.
well, look in
That would be a really good name for like a right wing like bar, like speakeasy
right.
type bar in New York, because there's all these hipster reactionaries now in New York and other places. Like that would be a really good name
Okay, well,
for like
listen,
a
if you want to open it, it, I'm there with you, and we'll work on it. I'll I'll design the logo. Okay, but seriously, um, there's always been sympathy for certain other countries. At the American
Yeah,
founding, there were two parties. The Jeffersonians loved and were sympathetic with the French revolutionaries, and the Federalists loved and felt sympathy to the English inheritance and wanted a close relationship with them, despite the war that had just been fought. And that's you're never going to be able to uproot the fact that people who love their own country understand and sympathize and feel an affinity for other people who love their country. The only people who do not feel this sympathy is the liberal internationalists who feel a sympathy for other liberals in every country in the
right,
world and a
right,
horror for people who love their own country
right, right.
and their own
Yes,
inheritance everywhere.
yes, yes. Yeah. No, I obviously I completely agree with that. I sort of have a rant I could launch into here, but I'm not going to. Because it would sort of seem defensive, probably for good reason. Let's talk quickly about another topic, and then we'll jump to the final topic, which is the one that I'm actually interested in. That's not true, but it's the one that's the most selfish. But let's first talk. So, um, I remember when the first NatCon was sort of announced, it was pitched as an academic conference. I remember there was this thing, oh, do you want to present a paper? Which is what you say which is what you say at an academic conference. It's a highbrow conference. It's
Most of the speakers were not academics, though. A-
true.
actual academics, people sitting in universities were always a minority in the leadership of the movement and in the speakers. It's still the case.
Fair enough. But it's highbrow, and which is not a bad thing. I'm an unashamed elitist. I'm a populist elitist, and I theorized the concept of the populist elitist. Anyway, I just wanted to bring up this issue of what's known as elite theory, or there's a problem with all these quote unquote populist nationalist movements, which is the need for what's been called cadres, what's been called elites. And it is a real problem on the right. Like let's not beat around the bush. You need competent, uh, high IQ, high agency, maybe sort of even sociologically elite or not, but certainly empirically elite, meaning very intelligent, very talented people to sort of run a government, run an effective political movement. Um, and this is uh, we have a deficit there vis-a-vis the liberals and arguably vis-a-vis the sort of establishment right. What are your thoughts on this issue? What do you think causes it? What do you think could be some potential remedies? Is the idea of NatCon to sort of be a remedy by being this sort of intellectual center of gravity? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yes. I mean, what? Let's start with what causes it. Uh, there's there's a discussion of this in chapter 3 of my book Conservatism, and I I assert there, I argue there that to be a conservative requires you to be realistic about a number of key aspects of human nature. The first of them is that human beings are born into families and tribes and nations. That is that we're not born, perfectly free to anyone, and we're not born, perfectly equal to anyone. We're born into families. Our families take care of us because of loyalty, and we grow up loyal to them. I'm not saying teenagers don't rebel, but just as a general rule, which has plenty of exceptions, but as a general rule, everywhere you look, human beings form these loyalty groups and concentric circles, families, tribes, nations, families of nations. It's universal. It exists everywhere in human history. And a second universal aspect is that these groups compete with one another. They when they're attacked, they join forces, and when they're not, when they're doing well, they start to fight among one another. And a third aspect is that they are internally hierarchically structured, and that is completely natural. It's absolutely universal, and this aspect of it is emphasized by the elite theorists that you're alluding to. The fact that it doesn't make any difference if you know you're a communist and you believe in the absolute equality of people, and your goal is the absolute equality of people. Nevertheless, your communist party is almost instantly, from the moment that it's created, it's hierarchically structured, and people rise.
That's
And
strange.
yeah, no, but it's true everywhere. So in every human organization and loyalty group and movement, there is a
Yes.
hierarchical structure.
Yes.
There's always a leadership, which is a small number of people. There's always
Yes.
a followership, a base, as people like to call it, which is much larger numbers. And uh, and 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 people compete be to rise up in these hierarchies, to be more influential, to be better, better known and better loved. But I think that the key to it is that the higher you are in the hierarchy, the more weight the things you say carries with people. Not everybody sits around, like a little Nietzsche, inventing a worldview, out of his own individual soul. Most
Right.
people most people on most issues are very happy to adopt or to adapt the things that they hear that the leadership in a hierarchy that they like saying. If they don't like the leadership, then they may leave and find some other hierarchy. But as long as they're comfortable and happy, there is a leadership, and that leadership, they may have certain arguments amongst themselves, and they do, but that leadership is both able to influence to a very great degree what it is that the base thinks. I'm not saying that they don't also listen to the base, but leadership has a massive influence. If you just think of the way that Donald Trump changed the way people speak on the
Oh,
right, the
yeah.
things they care about,
Yeah.
the way they speak, right? And this is
Okay, so
natural.
why do we
No,
have this deficit relative to other political movements and families?
well, the deficit is not. It's not that we don't have leadership. I mean, there is a leadership at any given moment.
Right.
You can um, uh, make a rough estimate of, you know, Trump.
Yes.
Trump is
But
more,
there's the
more.
cadre problem. It's the lieutenants and
Yeah.
captains
Okay. So
and majors. We have great generals and we have great ground troops. But any successful military, I assume you've served in the military
I have.
for
Yes.
some time as an Israeli. You need every rung on the ladder, and the middle rungs are probably the most important,
Right.
actually.
Right.
And
So,
and
so
that is
every
that is where we have a real deficit. I mean, JD Vance is an extremely intelligent person. He's probably got 20 IQ points on anybody in the Democratic Party for sure. But the Democratic Party has a cadre of activists who are numerous. They're all relatively intelligent, and they're sort of very well practiced, and so on and so forth.
yes.
And same with Marine Le Pen, she's an extremely impressive person intellectually. Actually, um, when you meet her, she has this sort of populist persona, but she's a very intellectually impressive person. Um, but there is a cadre problem in the national rally. I'm not going to discuss it too much
Yeah.
in public, but I think even people who supported that party would admit broadly that this is the case. Why is this, and what can we do to fix it?
Why it is I think pretty obvious. I mean, the reason that I don't um, that I think it's worth one of the reasons I think it's worth insisting on the word conservative is because there are plenty of people on the right who um, write very eloquently about they have these fantasies about how you could um, just run America like a corporation. I mean, it's I'm not just talking about Curtis. I'm just talking about Curtis Yarvin. There's many different kinds of things
Yes,
on the right
there's a
where
traditional conservative version of
where,
this.
where they're revolutionaries, which is itself not in all situations inherently bad, but their thinking is all we need to do is to get the right guy on top, and he'll
Hmm.
and he'll issue dictates, and then things will work. And reality doesn't. I don't think reality ever works like that, but most of the time, certainly, it doesn't work like that. And the 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 way that human societies uh, deal with the hierarchical nature of the society and the desire to perpetuate it and to propagate it over time is by creating institutions, especially schools, you know, educational institutions whose purpose it is to take the um, the the most ambitious, the most intellectually sharp, the most talented in different ways. I mean, human beings have a variety of different talents, and a good traditional educational system. What it does is it identifies the young people who have a whole range of different talents and offers them um, both real training, inherited real training, and also an incentive in terms of the honor that's given them if they graduate, if they finish that training. So the sometimes some of the training is actually useful and helpful, learning about the past, sharpening your skills, learning from others who have the same skills and learning to be better. And 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 some of it is just a question of creating a kind of esprit de corps among these prospective elites who are rising, teaching them to value one another and to help one another in their effort to inherit what the older elites, what's good about them, to improve things, and to then inherit the responsibility for leading the nation or the tribe, uh, uh, or the empire, going forward. So these institutions, it takes a lot of time and a lot of money to build them. Okay, I mean it's
Yeah,
they're also kind of natural, but in an advanced society that has a lot of money,
right.
you look at. I mean, everybody knows this that
So you think
if
it's
you
a
if
lack of institutions on our side?
well, yes, because I mean, to begin with, just like who are the people who are the leaders right now? So Donald Trump went to Penn and to Fordham, and J.D. Vance went to Yale, and I don't know if I get included in this, but I went to Princeton, and so many of the leaders and potential leaders of the right are people who they're actually dissidents and breakaways
Right.
from who were trained in the existing elite
Right.
institutions. Now that training, it gives them a number of things. First of all, they know how to speak in certain ways that are accepted by elites
Right.
in
Right.
America and in other places. They have connections.
Right.
Even when I was in college, I wasn't one of these people who like ever. I didn't think I needed connections. I was dumb. I didn't like sit around like writing down people's names so I'd have connections. But it turns out, 30 years later, I still have all these friends, and now they're senators, and it the
No, it's tremendously helpful.
so what's bad about this? What's bad about it is that those of us who really understand what we're trying to do are half half ashamed of the fact that we survive these institutions because no, seriously, JD gave a talk at one of the NatCon conferences that was
Yes.
called the universities are the enemy. And
The famous Nixon line, yes.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
I love because this clip has been replayed, roughly a million times now.
okay, but in part it's a rhetorical flourish, but in part it's just true that, like,
Yes.
if you want someone to explain in detail how these educational institutions corrupt and destroy the elites, twist them
Yeah.
and turn them away from everything that is healthy in their national inheritance and their religious inheritance and their understanding of philosophy and science and art. If
Okay, so
you
it's the
if you
universities.
if you want a lecture on this, I could go on for hours. People who've been through it, they know exactly
Yeah. Yeah.
why it's so pernicious, and so that's why. I mean, I'm speaking for myself personally. I've spent most of my adult life trying to establish competing elite institutions that will be able to take young people on the right and give them an education that's appropriate for them to be able to enter the leadership because otherwise what happens is everybody on the right, uh, we've got some good ideas, then we send our kids to university, our kids are ruined, they grow up, they inherit our names, and then they like destroy everything because, I mean, I won't, everybody knows a few people like this that I'm talking about. They inherit the
Yes.
names of their great forebears, and they walk
Yes.
around with those names being prestigious,
Yes.
but actually they're just spokesmen
Yes.
for the liberal
For the Borg.
internationalists who hate their tradition.
Right.
So
Right.
so there must be alternatives. Now,
Yeah.
as it happens, I've spent 30 years on this particular problem, and I've tried on numerous occasions. I've been involved in trying to establish all sorts of different institutions, both in Israel and in America and in other countries.
Yeah.
In Israel, I've tried three times to establish an institution of higher education for conservatives, and so far I've failed three times, and we'll see what happens the fourth time. But um, the but I'll tell you what the primary problem is that these institutions, it's not just that they have billions of dollars in the bank.
Yes.
They have donors who are loyal to them, not just
Yes.
liberal donors, but all these
Right.
conservative donors, all these conservative, the
Right.
not just the establishment conservatives, even Trump loving
Yeah.
billionaires. Check,
Oh, yeah.
find out, are they still giving money to Harvard, to these crazy leftist
Yeah, because
lunatic.
they want their kids to attend, and this is part of the racket, right?
Well, but yeah, but why should they want their kids to attend? I mean, they should not want their kids to attend, but but they know that the power structure in the country is still such that you're better off going to such a place. Now,
Yes.
okay, so I look, I,
I,
I have,
let, let,
yeah,
I'll,
go ahead.
I'll
See,
be the devil's
now
advocate
you've
on this.
really got me going.
Yeah, yeah. No, I can tell you're really passionate about this. So I want to keep rolling with it. And I agree. Like this is a very real thing. I've been in numerous events, and I'm sure you have the same stories where you're at some sort of conference with like GOP donors and so on and so forth, and you talk about how the left is crazy, the universities are crazy, the media is crazy, blah 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 blah, and then you get to the dinner and you chat. It's like, oh, what's up? Do you have kids? And, oh yeah, my daughter just started at Princeton.
Yeah.
I'm so proud. And it's like, but at the same time, as you said, the system is such that the incentive to send your kids to one of these places, unless you're an actual billionaire, where you could sort of create your own, Abbaye de Thelem or your, Rousseauvian tutoring system for your child or whatever, uh, the benefits of going to these institutions are immense. And I'm thinking about this because I'm starting. My children are growing up. The oldest is 13 now, and she's academically quite talented. Like she's very, very good academically, and so she could, and she speaks English very well, so she could potentially go to an Ivy League school, go to Oxbridge, or go to one of the great grandes écoles in France. And you know what would you say to someone like me who says, look, I agree these institutions are toxic in all these sorts of ways, but I have a child who's academically gifted. I want to give her all of the opportunities in the world, practical opportunities, but also scholarly opportunities. Let's say she, uh, if you're, if you become interested in some, niche topic. Let's say, you want to do research on Chaucer or Wordsworth or some obscure academic. Well, you're better off at Harvard than you are at, as much as I love that place, you're better off at Harvard than Hillsdale or whatever your conservative. This is not a knock on Hillsdale, which is an amazing institution, but these it's the top universities really do have amazing resources. So what would you say to someone like me?
Well, the first thing I would say is it's just not worth it. It's not worth the very great likelihood that you will lose your kid. I mean, the entire concept of a university that at the age of 18 you leave your hometown and your family and your religious upbringing and whatever it is you've got, and at the age of 18 you're ready to go be in a box with 5,000 other similarly totally uprooted kids with no guidance from from parents or pastors or responsible adults of any kind. I mean, this
Can
is an
can
this is
can I
an
just be
no,
politically incorrect for a second?
it's an educational abomination, and it, it
It's a very Jewish and very Israeli thing. Not not all of us live in a country that you can traverse in a 20-minute car ride.
no, but
And not all of us have, overbearing, overprotective mothers. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist making that
no,
joke.
I look. I think
No, but
look.
I understand the point you're making,
It
but
may be
people have been doing this since before the '60s, right? Sort of leaving home and pursuing educational opportunities, right? That this wasn't invented by the left.
that's for sure. But the question of whether you seriously are going to be able to live with yourself once you see what happens to your daughter after 4 years away from you in one of these places, I think that the look, I I have Yael and I have 9 children. The oldest really wanted to go to Princeton because her parents met at Princeton, and she went there. She survived and she flourished. and she's an Orthodox Jew and a conservative and a nationalist, and it was extremely painful for her. Um, and
Right.
and I don't I'm not certain that it was at all worth the pain, but at least she was one of the ones who came
Right.
out of it very well. Um, I'm We're fortunate in that uh, the rest of our we have eight more children. None of them have wanted to go to undergraduate universities far away from their parents. None of them wanted to do it, and we're delighted that they didn't want to do it. So
Well, okay.
I have
Uh,
one son. No, to
I
round
take
it
your
out.
point.
I have a son who stayed close to home until his doctorate, and he applied to Notre Dame, and he's doing a doctorate with Patrick Deneen, and that's also extremely difficult for him. But it's much better at that age
Yes.
than it was for my daughter who did it as an undergraduate.
Okay, but um, let's grant that you're right. Uh, I it doesn't answer the question, which is what do I do? Like, do I send my incredibly intelligent and talented child to a third tier education? I mean, here's the thing: like the third tier university is also going to be like a left wing brainwashing machine. um do I just say like sorry, you're not gonna have this sort of ticket to the global elite, which it is.
No, I think it's first of all, I think it's not. I think that
I
the
mean, it might change in the future, but it
no,
it still is today.
I think that the brand of places like Harvard and Yale and Princeton has been very badly damaged in the last decade. I mean, it was harmed before, but at this point, it's very badly damaged, and the and I'm not at all certain that you want your daughter to have a ticket into that elite. I mean, the question you started with is the alternative elite. I would like for my children to have tickets, as to the degree that it's possible, to the degree that it's appropriate in terms of their talents. I would like them to have degree ticket to the top of the universe of elite nationalists, the new world that we're building. If they decide that they want to take the risks, or they don't agree and they want to defect and they want to be part,
Right.
if they decide that, I think at this point we can give them a good enough education so they will be able to do that. Now there is a network at this point of professors in various universities who are sympathetic to our movement. There are also new institutions being built. That they're still small, but they they exist and they're growing. There are many red states in which the government is now funding the construction of different kinds of institutes, which are kind of they're kind of conservatism. Uh, what do you call it? Places of refuge on the campuses
Yeah.
where there are professors who are more or less conservative. Some of them are more so and some less. And if I were right now trying to figure out where to send children, I would do what we did with Achiad, with my son, which is to figure out where where on the face of the earth is there a professor who is an appropriate role model for the kid to
Interesting.
go and study, and for that professor to be the the uncle, like
Right.
the surrogate for the parents. That's exactly what almost no one ever does when sending their kids to these universities. We didn't do it with Avital as an undergraduate, and we should have. The number one question is, does this campus have someone who you would trust? At least one, hopefully 10 professors, but at least
Right.
one
Right. Right.
who you would you would call them up and you would say, look, I would like for you to meet my son, meet my daughter, and I want to know whether you're willing to take responsibility for looking after them educationally and morally while they're there. Now, the kid may not want it, but
Right.
but let's assume for the moment we're talking about
Right.
a kid who actually does not want to rebel and become a leftist fruitcake and spend their time on sex and drugs and whatever else there is used in
Right.
order to make sure the kids don't come out religious or traditional in
Right.
any way. The thing to do is to go to
Okay.
particular
That's practical
professors,
advice.
particular corners that, for all I mean, literally, you and I should be, licensing these places. Not obviously literally, but we should be saying to people, "Here's a list of professors who'll take care of your kid. I'll make an introduction if you want." And
That's
if there's no such professor, and obviously that's not everybody who calls themselves conservative. It has to be somebody who's
right.
really a conservative. But
Right.
if there's if you have such a name, then that's more important than the reputation of the school. That's much more important, and I think we can do that in some of the existing institutions. But let's not skip the crucial part of this, which is that creating a new institution, in the end, it requires one very wealthy person who
Yes.
is insistent that the system's got to change. And
Yeah.
one of the frustrations is that intellectuals and theory types, we get to this conclusion much faster than the businessmen do, and
Yes.
so there's a delay.
I've had that conversation
Right.
many times because
Okay,
this
but
is also the topic
I've
I
also
think
had the
about a lot.
conversation many times, and there is a delay, but it's going to happen eventually,
Yeah.
because the side the this as the bitterness of the right against the liberal institutions rapidly grows, and
Right.
it's rapidly growing, and as the attractions of being part of the right
Right.
for uh, billionaires and other wealthy people and other powerful people who are sick and tired and they're exhausted and the scales have fallen from their eyes. They're beginning to actually see what do these institutions really do? What do they really stand for? And
Right.
eventually, some of them they come to say, "This is poison. I'm going to not
Right.
stop giving my money to poison." So s- one of those people, a few of those people, are going to have to, in different places, to say, that's it. What my legacy is going to be, is going to be a new institution that is going to be conservative from the ground up, and that is going to be an alternative. And it can be done. The personnel exists to do it.
Yes.
The motives exist to do it, but we could use a little bit of help with the funding.
Yes. All right. We've done an hour. You're a very busy man because NetCon DC is in 3 weeks, 4 weeks. So
September
we're gonna
2nd, September
what
2nd through 4th in Washington, D.C. Go to,
September 2nd through 4th in Washington DC. Get your tickets. Get your T-shirts.
right,
Uh,
natcon.org. Go to natcon.org
natcon.org.
and
Sign up
sign
for
up.
the mailing list. If you've stuck out this long, you're definitely in the target audience. Uh, so we're just gonna skip the third topic that I wanted to talk about because
We'll do it next
I
time.
guess it'll just be an excuse to have you on again. But we finish our podcast with a traditional question that we ask every guest, which is recommend a book. It can be any book, uh, fiction, nonfiction, written by a dead person, contemporary, and so on and so forth, that is not in your area of expertise. So, not political philosophy, not current events, not geopolitics.
Oh, I just read Patrick O'Brien's the first volume in the Master and Commander series, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It's very different from the film, which I also enjoyed, and I know it has a big following. But it's an extraordinary. It's really an education in how incredibly detailed um, historical research can allow you to bring a world that doesn't exist anymore alive in an astonishing way through literature. And I would say, not every aspect of it is conservative. It has conservative characters, it has liberal characters, and the struggles among them. It has nationalist characters, and all sorts of fascinating things. But it's a social study. You get to see different kinds of people in a traditional environment and understand what the tradition of seafaring, of combat in little wooden boats with shooting cannons at one another.
Yes,
It's
yes. This is yeah.
the it's very illuminating if you think about it from the perspective of, think how deep the traditions had to be to make it possible to make these ships maneuver, to make them maneuverable, to make the crews be able to make them fight against one another. It's an astonishing reconstruction, and very helpful, I think, for conservatives to immerse themselves in it.
Yes, that's a very good. That's an excellent observation. I remember I once read. I was reading about like French naval history, and sometime in the 17th or 18th century, the king wrote a memo to his minister of the navy saying, what do we need to do to catch up to the English? What do we need to do to have a navy that's as good as the English? And he wrote back something to the effect of, depends what you mean by that. If the question is, how can we have, as many ships that are of sufficient quality, we can have that in 2 years. Could we have crews that are as good and as well trained? That would take a generation. And so the fact that it was the product of a culture, a tradition, and so on and so forth is absolutely well taken. I've seen the movie like everybody else. I heard the books recommended many times. I kind of have an aversion to books where like the good guys are the English and the villains are the French. Uh,
you
uh,
know,
I'll be honest.
that's that. I only read the first book, so I can't tell you what happens uh,
Right.
onward.
But
But
it is about the
no,
Napoleonic Wars,
it
right?
it is, but it's the first volume at least is not constructed that way. You'll be surprised that one of the most the deepest um, aspects of the picture that's being painted is the way in which they the French and the English treat their opponents, their
Yes.
wartime enemies, as equals and potential friends and
Yes.
colleagues,
Yes.
and people to enjoy and appreciate, and
Yes.
and even to help in the midst of wartime. Now, this is not a pacifist book by any. It's not a touchy feely book, but the picture that it gives
Yeah.
you of the French commanders is admirable. It's
Yeah.
admirable, and the English appreciate them. You know, they
Yes.
don't sit around.
It
Hey,
was it was the last era of gentlemanly warfare.
so, so there's some that's less gentlemanly. But if you're worried that it'll treat the French as monsters, that that not in the first volume. Yeah.
That thank you for that, but it's just I don't like reading about the French losing. It's just generally There are some periods that are very difficult for me to
Okay.
read
Uh,
about. The French Revolution is one of them. The Russian Revolution is another. It's just anyway. I'll probably pick
wh-
it up someday, but this is just one of my sort of misgivings. I could read about anything. I don't have to read about like France losing battles and losing wars.
all right. So I screwed that up. That was
No,
that
it's a great. I mean, this is why
was
it's such an
that was
interesting question.
that was
You
like a
always get
that was a
interesting
total.
recommendations. If you ask people recommend a book, they'll just like talk about a book that's in their area. But if you say recommend a book outside your area of expertise, you always get interesting recommendations. That was a very good recommendation.
Okay.
I don't think anybody would have expected Yoram Hazony to recommend the Master and Commander books. So that's a very good conclusion. Thank you very much for your time. This was a lot of fun. This was very interesting. And I guess if I want to ask about your other books, you're just gonna have to come on again.
Yep, that's true. Will do.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a nice
Thank you,
day.
Pascal. Bye.
Bye.